This is From the Courtroom to the Boardroom, the podcast for the next generation of legal leaders with me, Simon Gibson. I was a lawyer for 13 years until I walked away from legal practice and entered the world of business. I'm now CEO of the Spirant Group and I lead a portfolio of businesses in the UK and Australia. On this upbeat podcast, I tackle the big issues facing law firms and businesses alike with the help of intriguing guests. Are you ready to rewrite the script? Then it's great to have you along for the ride. Hello friends, welcome. Good to have your company again. Simon Gibson here. The podcast is From the Courtroom to the Boardroom, and you will know that one issue we love talking about on this podcast is technology, and particularly members of the legal sector, if they're law firms or part of the wider supply chain, who've really embraced the value of technology and allowed that to bring great value to their business. And I'm really delighted to say I've got one of the real pioneers of embracing technology in our sector along as guest today, who is Nick Ellis. Nick is the leader and founder of Laird Assessors, who provide intelligence and data analytics to the automotive sector. Now, we're going to hear a lot more about what that entails, but I've been working with Nick. I started working with Nick virtually at the start of my legal career when I was an accident and injury lawyer. And to say his business has progressed between now and then really would be an understatement. So it's really great to have Nick on board. We're going to be talking about his journey from right back when we started working together, when we used to deal with telephones and emails and all sorts of bits of paper, to now where Nick's business is very focused on providing an intelligent, technology-driven solution to the automotive sector. And he works, his business works nationwide with a number of the really biggest players in that industry. So without further ado, this is all about technology in the legal sector. And my guest is Nick Ellis, who's the leader of Laird Assessors. Nick, hello. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thank you for that amazing introduction.
Well, no problem at all. You made the point there that you wanted to make a note of the introduction and use it in your promotional material.
If we could, yeah. I think you say it much better than I do.
Well, it wouldn't come cheap. I've got to emphasize.
No legal advice does.
No, I was just thinking when I was preparing for the podcast, we first spoke, I think it was about 2000 or 2001.
That sounds about right, yes.
And I, at that point, was an accident and injury solicitor. And I guess this is the best way of introducing the early stages of what your business does. And we can think then about the amazing strides you've made in the last couple of decades. But when I got a new client who'd been involved in an accident and they'd come to me for legal advice, quite often it was a road traffic accident. There was a damaged car somewhere and we needed an expert to assess the damage to the car and then to report in such a fashion that allowed me to get either the cost of the repairs or the cost of the car back from the insurance company. And I used to ring Laird Assessor's office.
That's right, yeah.
And report the new claim. And then lo and behold, a report would arrive at my office detailing everything I needed some days later. So tell me about what Laird Assessors, how it started and what it did back in the early days and your reflections on that time.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I used to work for Leonard Boundwell, another engineering company, and one week on a Wednesday, I got told I was being made redundant on the Friday. So I had 2 days notice really to think about what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I had a few clients who said, well, look, tell us where you go. We'll like to use you in future. And a couple said, well, why don't you set up on your own? And I had been humming and hawing a little bit about that. So I thought, well, that's probably the catalyst I need to actually get off my backside and give it a go. And I think in the first year, all I was doing was a carbon copy of what I was doing in a previous job. So solicitors phone up, can you come and have a look at this car? I'd organise that, go out, examine the car, do a nice report and send it off. And about a year or two into it, I realised that it was getting a little bit out of control in terms of volume. And for no particular USP, it was just if you do a good job, you get more work.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So I had to make a decision. Do I stay on my own and do okay? Or do we go a little bit bigger? And decided naturally to take somebody on. And I remember it being probably more scary taking on my first employee than even starting up the business. And then fast forward to, I think we peaked at 70 staff in 2019.
Wow.
And obviously we've reduced things now, and we'll get onto that a little bit. But back in those days, it was a very phone-driven movement of data. You would phone us. We'd look at the car. We would phone people that we needed data from, like the DVLA, for example, and they would tell us over the phone that the chassis, the data registration and the CC, and it was a very, very manual thing. We would write reports. The car received a impact to the rear, and so on and so forth. And that's pretty much how it started, and how it's been for this was 2000, so it was probably pretty much unchanged deep into kind of the 2010s, maybe early 2012, 2013 was really, it was just reports all the time.
And you know what you said there was really resonated with me, Nick. When people feel anxious about technology, it's quite often along the lines of, well, this is going to, the humans are going to lose jobs because of the machines are going to do the work. But if you actually look at what technology does to the process, you've just described there a process that you did really well. You did it very successfully. You did a good job. But it's clunky as hell, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's a very bad process that has been improved immeasurably, which we'll touch upon. But how do you feel about when you're having conversations with any business, if it was a law firm or just anyone who's reticent about investing in technology?
Well, from our point of view, our engineers, qualified engineers, were spending a lot of their time not engineering. They're actually just moving data around.
Or on the road.
Or doing administration tasks. And we said to them, well, look, you're going to have a much better quality of life if you can just concentrate on the engineering side, the stuff you want to do, the stuff that you joined this world for. I do feel that some people don't embrace change very easily, and that's something that we've got to be very, very careful to manage. What we tend to do is reskill and diagonally promote a lot of people. So, for example, some of our engineers now started off as just admin support staff, and over the years we've kind of retrained them to fit where we've gone. So we've changed very much from a third of us fee earning to about 85% of us fee earning now as actual proper engineers. So we've taken that other 2/3. Some have retired naturally, but the ones that we really like, the really good people, we wanted to keep. So we wanted to try and reskill them so that we can actually retain them.
And I think there's a clear pattern there which will happen in all sectors as technology becomes more advanced and I believe more embraced. Because when people worry about the machines are going to take our jobs, they're working on, I think, on a mistaken apprehension that there's, in reality, a business as it looks on a particular day is the only way it can ever look. And therefore, if it continues to look that way, there'll be less work for the humans to do, and the humans are all going to end up on the unemployment queue. Whereas the reality of it is that investing in technology and truly embracing it gives the business the means to improve the lives of their team.
100%. We've seen people now so much more happier because they're actually doing what they went to uni or what they went to college to actually do, rather than spending a lot of time data entry. We can reskill people. And don't forget, this has been happening for years. We changed from horses to cars.
Yeah.
Okay, some shoesmiths might have lost their jobs, but ultimately we moved on. Telephonists used to have to connect. They don't now. It's just a natural progression. But those people, instead of doing pretty basic jobs and pretty unfulfilling jobs in some cases, are now actually doing things that they probably didn't even think about when they were at school or university. They're doing stuff that probably didn't even exist maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
And that's the key point, isn't it? That doing stuff which didn't exist is why nobody has got anything to fear from technology, because as technology develops, the nature of work will develop. And in fact, more work which is befitting of human intervention will be created, particularly in a business which has the capability to grow.
Very much so, yeah. But I think it's also the technology itself has become a lot more user-friendly. So maybe if you look back, say 10, 15 years ago, and there was developers with big HTML codes everywhere, and to a normal person, it would look just a million miles away from anything they realize. Whereas now there's so much more user-friendly software out there, drag and drop, no-code type programs, and it's making technology a lot more accessible. People do things with their phones now that they wouldn't have thought about 10, 15 years ago, because the phones have got the UI designed specifically to make it non-techie, to make it easy. And I think we've certainly done that with SwiftCase. We've tried to say, well, we realized a few years ago, we don't really want you phoning up and saying, can you move this button here? Could you add this? Can we have another form? Can it make it do this if that happens? Well, okay, well, here, we'll give you a little builder, and so you don't have to worry about code. We can just drag and drop all these little bits until you make it. It won't break. You can rewind it if it goes a bit wrong. You can try different ones. You can A/B test different routes. And I think it's saying to people, technology, we don't expect you to program. We don't expect you to code, but we do expect you to understand how the technology not works, but certainly the expected outcomes of the
Absolutely,
technology.
how it's used and what impact it can have. So
exactly.
You mentioned SwiftCase there, which brings us right up to date with lead assessors. So tell us about SwiftCase and tell us about how this particular piece of technology and others that you've embraced has changed that process of accident is reported or damage is reported to a vehicle, out on the road, looking at the car, then back, inputting data. How's SwiftCase changed that process?
We realized that we had a huge gap between a lot of our technologies. So as LED, we used a couple of estimating systems. We used data from the DVLA, the HPI. We want to check the histories of the cars. We want to value the cars on Glasses Guide and things like that. And they were all siloed bits of software. And the humans were dragging data from one system and adding it into another. And based on that data, would make a decision on something. So, for example, if the repair costs exceeded the value of the car, it would be a total loss. And they would write that down as a report. So we thought, is there something that we can sit as a almost like an octopus that can connect to all those different bits of technology? So that's when we first developed SwiftCase. And it was that was all it was to start with. And then we thought, well, actually, there's a lot of if this, then that. If it's a total loss, then it needs to go to a salvage yard. If it's a repairable, it needs this. If it's drivable, if it's roadworthy, it won't need a hire car if it's not, and so on and so forth. So we actually thought, well, rather than just give a piece of paper, a report to the solicitor or to the hire car company, we asked them, well, what do you do about that? And they would say, well, if it's a repair, this is our garage in this particular location. And we said, well, do you want us to just authorize that garage and cut out the middleman? Yeah, fantastic. It makes their life easier. And that's how it developed. I think we got to about 2017, 2018, and we put a lot of effort into building the foundation of SwiftCase. And that's when it, for me, got very exciting, because the developers kind of left their main heavy building job to us yellow personalities who wanted to be creative. And from then on in, it was like, oh, wow, how can we make it better? How can we make it more efficient? And so we spoke to a lot of our clients, what is it you want? And it's strange, because what we assumed our clients wanted maybe in 2000 was probably quite different. So as an example, we would produce big reports. You remember the 16 pages, and it would tell you the cogs in the gearbox and the weight and a load of irrelevant information that I bet you didn't even look at. But really what you want to know is a few salient bits of detail.
Yes, that's right.
So now, rather than produce a big report, we can very quickly triage a car and say, yeah, it's definitely a repair, definitely a total loss, and actually physically move it, or instruct the hire car company to provide a hire car.
And that's being done on the basis of factual information that's those conclusions are reached at the assessment.
Correct, yes. So many years ago, when we were doing it, we'd send the chap out and go and have a look at the car and do the assessment. And as you say, 3 or 4 days later, you get a nice report. Now all we do is just send a link to the guy, talk to him through taking photos of his car specific to what we need. So the front, the side, the mileage, the chassis number, things like that. And from those, we've got some pretty big and cool screens and filters and things so we can see the tiniest little details in it. And from there, in our head office, our engineers will go through the assessments. And rather than do a full assessment, they will just do a triage, just a quick, that's definitely a total loss. That's definitely a repairable car. Because we don't need to know to the penny at this point what we're doing with the car. All we need to know is it needs to go there or it needs a higher car. And then we fill in the blanks a little bit further down the line. It also allows the car to go to a repairer and let's say it needs to go on the ramp or have a bumper removed or something. It gives a bit of time for that. So our reports are just that much more accurate when we actually get to see them.
When you talk there about the level of investment you had to make in Swiftcase and your platform generally.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Sorry.
You all right?
The thought of investment, yeah. 10 years worth of investment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what I think businesses find most intimidating because you had a clear vision for what you wanted to achieve, but particularly law firm clients of ours, and this is no criticism of them, they don't necessarily have a vision of why they would invest in technology. But I think what there is out there now, there's a growing appreciation that one of the solutions to a shortage in labor, to a driving down of margins is technology. But I think first of all, finding the why can be quite intimidating.
Very much so, yeah.
And then secondly, thinking, well, I found the why, but how am I going to fund this bloody thing? So how did you sort of find your why, first of all?
There's a lot of questions in there. I would start with saying that the why is that, why are we doing any of this? Well, we need to get information, intelligence into these clients. And it's that simple. I think going back to why people aren't investing heavily, and I think that goes back to legacy systems.
Yeah.
If you rewind 10, 15, 20 years, it was a huge, big change, right? We're stopping using this system and we're going to roll out this huge, big system into something else. And I think people didn't realize that that's not the way to do it. Technology is very different to most industries in so much as, let's say when I do a report, when I gave you a report, it had to be spot on. It had to be very, very accurate because it could be ripped apart in court. I do remember putting a chassis number down slightly wrong. Didn't make any difference to the report, and a barrister ripping me a new one. On the premise of, if you've done that wrong, what else have you done wrong?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it has to be right. Technology doesn't. And it takes a little bit to get your head around this. I remember going to Google many years ago and they said, we release our beta products at 80% finished. And I thought, crikey, that's a very, very low number. And they said, the reason we do that is no matter how smart we think we are in this room, there's nothing like the rest of the world to
It's
to
user
tell us.
feedback.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when you get your phone out shiny and new out of the box, that's the best version of that phone you'll ever have.
Yeah.
Sorry, beg your pardon. That's the worst version of the phone you'll ever have. After that, it gets better, it gets upgraded, it gets tweaked. And so we realized this, that with technology, putting it into other companies, it doesn't have to be a huge, big, mammoth task. Let's just do a little building block first. That helps with the human understanding and change. It's not suddenly a big thing. And if it's a bit wrong, don't worry. It's not meant to be perfection. It's meant to be excellent, not perfection. We'll change it and we'll tweak it. When they're happy and when everything's running smoothly, let's add a little bit more, and so on and so forth. And that's really how we've done it with Swiftcase. Getting back to the kind of, after we build the foundations, that's when that comes in. Ooh, wouldn't it be nice if it did this? Oh, can you make this? Can you build that? I think the other thing as well is, looking back 15 years ago, the technology just wasn't there.
No.
I mean, I'm still shocked even to this day about how rapid the Moore's graph is going with technology.
Yeah.
The stuff we've got now is just incredulous. We kind of got into AI maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it's certainly the last 12 months or so, it's changed the way we work from start to finish.
Just a few things to ask you about there then. I mean, the first point, I have to agree with you that incremental improvement in technology is much better than a massive disruption event.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
And when I'm talking to law firm clients, I think the way the legal tech sector develops hasn't really supported that ethos, because it's all new system driven. It's all, we need a new X.
A brand new car.
Exactly.
Yeah, not just, let's put a better exhaust on or something.
Exactly. And the two consequences of that are, I think, the first point is it puts immediate value pressure on whoever the leader is. So if you spend a load of money, if it causes a load of disruption, the leader is under pressure from there. I always say, look, what are the quick wins? Year one, how can you get your people believing in the value that technology can bring? And just saying, write down tools for 3 weeks while we implement a new system with no clearly identified why, that doesn't always win your people over. And that's before you even get to the cost. But just on that issue of winning the hearts and minds of your people, I just always view that as crucial. Did you have any challenges in that regard?
To an extent in the earlier years, yeah, because it was a lot more bigger things going in. Now we can drip feed. Just make sure you're happy with it. But also, we operate a bottom-up management system, so you tell us. It's a very Toyota thought process of, you on the front line know much better than I do exactly where you want this button to do. Where's it meant to go? Where should this go? How do we make the system better for you? What pees you off during the daytime? All the little things. And we very much work on the 1% gains. So let's just make it 1% better today and maybe 1% better tomorrow. And suddenly a year later, you've got a system that's significantly better. But we listen to our people and let them drive a lot of the innovation. Obviously, there's some stuff that we have to do, but I would say drip feed little and often. But also, he said the why. Why are we doing this? Well, it's going to make your job a little bit quicker, a little bit easier. It's going to save you a bit of time doing some boring stuff. So we try and get the sell in. But they're buying that. And
that's a great point, because I think when I think about advising law firms, people in the legal sector on finding their why, if you're talking to a leader or a leadership team, effectively it comes down to three things. I think it's recruitment and retention.
But that's a huge subject, isn't it?
Well, let's touch on that then, because I mean, you've obviously been successful in retaining a team, partly due to giving them the means to reach their potential. You mentioned about people coming on board in relatively junior positions and training them up. How important has that been?
Incredibly. I find recruitment really, really difficult. If you'd have asked me 10 years ago, I'd say, I'm a great judge of character. But actually, I think it's very, very difficult. People are different to how they are day to day in a recruitment, in an interview situation. But if you look at led assessors, we have 1, 2, 3 people in management positions who all started in data admin. And we've seen that they had the potential to become superstars, but we also saw that, hang on, if they stay in this, what is a relatively boring position, a year or two down the line, they're going to go somewhere. Yeah. So we've either got to take them, pluck them from obscurity and try and train them, motivate them, inspire them. And we normally find out fairly quickly whether they are enthusiastic. And we've been very lucky because we've found some superstars. We've trained them, molded them in the way we want to. And it hasn't been easy because we're a small and agile company. And obviously investing a lot in technology. So they have to be happy to move the goalposts, to evolve.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? But you've just made a point about being a small and agile team. But you are doing. You shared with me some of the accounts you work with, some of the businesses in the sector.
Yeah,
and you really are one of the leaders in this automotive intelligence space. So that vision that you've been able to pull off, that is in itself inspiring. And then if you can offer your people the opportunity to advance, enjoy their jobs, earn more money, I think those two things, the vision and then the what does the vision mean to me, that's the holy grail of retention.
Very much so, yeah. Very much so. I mean, we work a lot with our culture and ethos to make sure our people are trained and inspired and motivated. And I think we look at what's important, the whys of the business, why we're doing this. We're not too worried about having to wear a suit and tie, or we're a very relaxed culture. It's jeans, jumpers, dogs, glass of wine on a Friday. They're not the important things. The important things are, when you do your report, it's got to be spot on. It's got to be good. And that's it. That's all we ask. We want the clients to be happy. We want you to be happy. And we want you to come in on a Monday morning and think, great, I've got a good day at work here. I don't want that TFI feeling that, oh my goodness, it's the weekend. And I think the technology has actually helped us to do that, because there's a lot less of the boring data entry, administrating type stuff, and there's a lot more of we're actually doing what we like doing.
Well, I think that you've made the point there about Monday mornings. I always say that the key to retention isn't what happens at drinks on a Friday. It's what happens on the rainy Mondays and Tuesdays when people don't feel like coming into work, but they still have that inspiration.
Absolutely,
to do so.
Yeah, but they need to feel part of a team. Yeah, and I think that's really important. Diversity is a thing that is in the press a lot at the moment. To me, that's really call it neurodiversity, or how people think. We use insights quite a lot to make sure that we have different people at different positions. And I see us very much like a rugby team. You've got the great big fellas in the scrum, you've got the fast people on the wing, you've got the kickers, all with different skills, not massively interchangeable, but together, my goodness, what a team.
And do you know what? It's interesting you say about diversity, and it is in the news such a lot, and it's something which I think as a small business owner, like we are, then, I've got the utmost respect for EDI academics, for leaders in those fields. But to me, diversity's always just been about what's in your DNA. It's about what you live and breathe.
Well, certainly what's in your brain.
Yeah. And it's something which I think it's possible to lose focus on the fact that being an inclusive employer is about bringing whoever your people are on the journey with you.
Exactly. 100%. I couldn't have put it better myself.
Podcast today is brought to you by Zeus Tech Solutions, who provide dev on demand for law firms. When I was managing partner of a law firm, recruiting and retaining top tech talent was one of the biggest challenges. And we're still, because we didn't have the knowledge in the business to manage and coach a technical team, it was a constant cycle of frustration, downtime, lost revenue, and proclaim lying dormant. Well, for the past 5 years, Zeus have looked after both of Spire & Group's law firms in the UK and Australia, and it's been a game changer. Now, we get all of our tech on tap, from IT director to .NET developer. We get that whenever we want. Zeus provide the best use of tech to all of our fee earners with no recruitment fees and absolutely no nonsense. So if you're a law firm who are frustrated with their tech anywhere in the world, go to www.zeustechsolutions.co.uk and hit the live chat option, and the answer to all of your tech solutions, however specific they are, is right there. Better still, if you mention that you heard about Zeus on the podcast, you will get a free health check for your case management system. So that's Zeus Tech Solutions, dev on demand for law firms. And now on with the podcast.
And just thinking about where you are now as a business then, Nick, what do you think the next 5 years hold? So let's first of all think about technology. Let's take a deeper dive into how this issue of automobile intelligence and data analytics works. So as of 2023, if you have a hire company or a smash repair network or something like that who needs an assessment on a car which has suffered damage for whatever reason, you're not physically attending that scene. And it's about then empowering the sort of the user to get what you need, and then for that to be transferred in a format which allows for decisions to be taken in everyone's best interest and in a progressive way.
Exactly, yeah. So the way it works now is that the policyholder, the driver, as soon as we're instructed, they will get a text with a link. They click on the link. It gives them a very straightforward guide to positioning their car on their camera and taking a few guided photos of the car, the mileage, the various bits and bobs. Where are we going to be like in 5 years? Simon, honestly, I don't know. Imagine asking that question 5 years ago. Could you predict the pandemic? Could you have predicted the kind of the stunning rise of AI? I honestly don't know. I don't think I've ever thought more than 5 months ahead, and let alone 5 years. And that's not me being flippant. Genuinely, I live very much for day to day. And I think that's one of the beauties about being agile is we don't have to think that far ahead. Who knows what we'll have by then? It's
very difficult to predict, isn't it, in terms of the technology? I mean, you've touched on AI there, so let's give some thought to this. One of the sort of, and this is not just in the legal sector. There's a lot of talk about, will artificial intelligence, will the machines become more human-like? Because, of course, we've seen now that they drive efficiency, but can they actually develop like a sentience? And we're having this conversation end of September 2023, and Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, gave his annual, I think he calls it Meta Connect, I think it was either yesterday or a couple of days ago, and he was talking a lot. He was sort of announcing the release of Meta's version of ChatGPT. But he was still talking a lot about this being more of like a friend, an assistant, a source of knowledge, but one which would also have sort of human characteristics to it. And when I think about how that could be applied to sort of the legal profession, and I'm talking there about the wider sector in terms of the supply chain, I think to myself, well, one of the things that the legal profession would always hold themselves out as is the human element. People want the bedside manner.
Yeah.
Well, what if the machines are able to develop that bedside manner? What's your view there? Is that something which is in itself different to the progress to date? Or is it something which you just think is on the same journey of advancement as we've been on for a while?
Yeah, I guess so. It's clearly coming in, and of course, anyone who's phoned a bank or a credit card will deal with an AI as a voice bot. And in some cases, I think it can give nice, clear, consistent responses and answers. And I guess from my personal point of view, maybe 90% of the times I've used a voice bot, they've been very, very good and got me to where I want. They work 24/7.
Don't take holidays.
We don't really use that human side of it. We don't really need it. We don't really want it. So, for example, we use AI for creating code. It doesn't need to be humanized. We use AI for reading stuff, for automation thing. It doesn't need any human aspect to it. And I think ChatGPT, yes, it's got a huge hype because it is simply brilliant. There's a newer version coming out as well, which is even more powerful. And I think it's great for many people's jobs can be eased a lot by that. We don't tend to use the generative side of things. Most of ours is either machine learning or the more automation sides of AI. And we use it extensively, but we use lots and lots of, well, not lots, but a handful of AIs throughout our processes.
And what about when things sort of take an unexpected turn in the process? I mean, one area I can always remember really well when I was a lawyer, and we had engineers' reports coming in. They identify damage. It looks straightforward. You send it off to the insurer, and the insurer's got a concern about whether the claim was genuine. And that sometimes can be, they would say, well, this damage on the vehicle isn't consistent with the accident circumstances. It could be things other than that. But how does your process sort of identify potential kinks in the road where perhaps you need to keep the process on track?
Well, We've been going 23 years, so we've seen pretty much every kink in the road that there can be. So when we design SwiftCase, we want everything to be green lights all the way through. But as you say, that doesn't always happen. So we've designed a RAG system, red, amber, green system, so that if something doesn't go quite right, well, we go off this way, we do this little routine, and hopefully that'll bring it back to the green light road. We can do as many of those as we need to. But ultimately, what if the backup and that backup fails? Well, that's when we need a red light, and that's when it needs to come to a human to say, look, I've tried everything, we just can't get there. And one of the great things about AI is it will give you a confidence level. So it can say, for example, right, that car is a total loss, and I'm 99% confident. If it says it's anything less than whatever you want to set it at, then at that point you can get a human involved in it. So I love that about AI. It knows itself how good it's been.
And there's been some well-reported occurrences of when AI just goes off on a bit of a frolic. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of this case. There was a case in New York. I think they call it the Avianca was the client, and the claimant's solicitor did some legal research on ChatGPT. Basically, it was prompted, this is my client's position. Please produce case law to support this. And the cases that ChatGPT produced didn't exist. They were just fictional. And he went up to the court and handed his skeleton argument in, and he's ended up. I think the judge has sympathised and has given like a $5,000 fine or something. But they call that I think they call it hallucinations. That AI just goes off on a bit of a frolic, and that's I think where you need the human checking.
I think the AI is doing what it's been told to do there, because you say it's intelligence. All it is, or generative AI, is I'm going to predict what the end of this sentence is.
Yeah.
And so it thinks, in here, I need a Simon versus Ellis type.
And if I can't find one, I need to create one.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's created something that it thinks you need to hear.
Yeah.
So that's all it's doing there. So it's not really as if it's got its own sentience. Let's make up some case law. And
it's not deliberately trying to mislead. It's more in the prompt, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. We, as I say, we don't tend to use the generative side of things very much. It's more the it's more the very parametered, isolated systems. So it's not like it's got its own mind. It's literally making code for us. Or we use it quite a lot for testing software as well. So it'll test in a million different ways, more than we can think of. So it's in a sandbox system. So we don't have to worry too much about it making up case law. I hope, for now. Maybe in 5 years.
Well, let's hope not.
Can we revisit this in 5 years and find out what is actually going on in the world?
I mean, this is because your assumption is things will get better. Your assumption is that, and I think
Ever the optimist.
Yeah, well, I think when people talk about the risks of technology, it's usually around things like, what if the AI takes over the guns? What if wars are fought with AI? And all of those concerns, it seems to me, are completely valid.
Absolutely, yeah.
But in terms of how we apply artificial intelligence or technology generally in our businesses, I still think there's nothing but positivity and optimism. And just on that point, let's go back to this issue of if we've got whether it's either a business which acknowledges the need to invest in technology, or maybe just a person who's interested in learning more about technology with a view to developing their career that way or to develop their business that way, what are the sort of do's and don'ts, do you think, in terms of heading off on a technology journey in your business?
Technology will only amplify what you're doing anyway. It will only exacerbate an existing system. So if your system isn't that great, it's going to make it even worse. But also technology can change the way that you actually do things. And I sometimes use the analogy of a sailing boat. If you're sailing with the wind behind you, it's fantastic. You can just sail straight. But if you want to go into the wind, you have to tack. You have to get your sail at 3/4, catch the wind, and zigzag and tack. Now, if I add technology to that sailboat in the form of a motor, it'll go much faster than it will with wind, but no longer do we need to tack. We don't need to zigzag anymore. We can just go directly to that point. So what we say with technology is don't worry too much about how we're getting there. I want an expected outcome, and we've got inputs here. I've got this. I want to be there. We've got an Earth with metal and stuff. We want to get to the moon. How we get there, we'll work that out along the way. But AI is very, very good at getting to expected outcomes. So I think the system has to be in place originally before you start timesing it by 2, times by 3 with AI and technology. I also think that AI has got such hype in the press at the moment that probably not many businesses actually need it at this stage. A lot of them need automation. So, for example, we used to give reports to you. It's a total loss, and you would have to deal with this. Well, why? Why don't we just tell the recovery agents if you're going to do that anyway? Yep. So we can link with APIs into that recovery agent. There we go. It's a job from there, and you've got that report.
Do you know what? I agree with you on that. There is such a lot of hype. And what I say to any business, well, particularly businesses in the legal sector, is the next 2 years or so, whilst these different products and systems like your ChatGPTs develop from something which is just very useful, good time saver, but not to be relied upon, while they develop, the 2 key things are, number 1, get your own system, get your platform as rock solid as you can.
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
And then secondly...
And your process as well. Get that right.
Because, like you've said, if you haven't, then rushing off to try and get awards for a piece of artificial intelligence you've implemented, your flavour of the month for 5 minutes, but then you're back to your why. Why have we actually done this? And that's when such a lot of frustration can be caused, and it can be a real opportunity missed.
Exactly, yeah. Use AI if it solves a problem.
Yeah.
One of the issues we had was, well, APIs are phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think they're one of probably the most underrated technology of the last decade or so, and we use them everywhere to connect to clients, to connect up and down the supply chain to our data sources everywhere, and they're great. But one of the practical problems is if you go to a business and say, right, here's our API data, it takes 3 or 4 hours to install it, is their IT team might say, okay, well, it's 6 months before we can even do this. Or it might just be a small firm that aren't that bothered about doing it or don't understand the benefits of it. So to get round that, because we don't want to receive faxes or emails particularly. So to get around that, we use AI to pass that information. So an email comes in or a PDF comes in, and we've told our AI, these are the salient bits of data that we want, the details of the policyholder of the car, what they want doing, and we get that to pick all that out and put it into our system. So in that case, AI has got round I suppose a practical problem to a much better solution. The API is obviously the best way to do it, but there's actually practical reasons why we can't put that in. So actually the AI can then take over the data gathering.
And it's that solution finding, it's your why, isn't it? I've got to let you go soon, but I was really fascinated to hear that Swiftcase has seen some appetite from outside of your specific process, from outside of what you do and outside of the legal and the expert reporting sector. So tell us about that. So how have you managed to diversify in that regard?
It's a workflow system that connects industry-specific things, and there's loads of industries that have that exact same problem. We've put into insurance companies, to wealth management, because they have exactly, it doesn't really matter what the end product is. They can follow, they get an instruction, they follow a flow, and they produce something and ultimately a fee note. And I think probably the easiest ways for us to sell it is the incredible efficiencies. Yeah. So just to put that into perspective, in 2019, compared to now, we've reduced our staff to about 35% of what we had, but we're about 30% more productive in terms of volume. So if you put those figures together, we're actually 330% more efficient. So in 2019, for every 1 member of staff, we produced about 42 reports a month. Now we're doing 142 reports a month. I mean, it's
phenomenal.
It's not just 10% here, 10% there. It's wildly different. 330% is if you said that to most bosses, they'd be saying fantastic.
And it's not that difficult, is it, to see just how those basics, in terms of looking at your process, in terms of looking at how you apply your system and how you get your people's buy-in.
Well, yes, especially from the top as well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people we speak to, and it can't be done. No, we've got a very different industry. We've got a very specific thing. It's the Henry Ford. If I asked people what they want, they'd say faster horses.
Yeah.
And we do encounter that quite a bit. So we kind of have to say, well, actually, would it be great if you could get to this point? Yes, it would be. Let's cut out a lot of this data entry. And we've genuinely made big savings. It's stunning. It's probably the biggest change to us as a firm that in our history, simply by utilizing technology.
And I mean, that's a lovely note to end it on, isn't it? So when we first met, we were doing paper, we were doing
faxes.
Faxes, telephone calls, and that all then was absolutely fine. That's not that long ago. And to see the way the technology available to us is advanced, but also, Nick, the way you've applied it in your business is just so impressive. So well done, sir.
I'm fundamentally lazy, so and it's laziness the root of all invention.
And you can do lots of other fun things with your time once your system and your processes
podcast with friends.
Yeah. Oh, listen, thank you so much for your company.
You're very welcome.
And for your insights. Best of luck.
Thank you.
And we'll talk again, no doubt.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.